This is Abe Friedhanser from Awards Radar, and I'm so thrilled to be speaking with Annaleigh Ashford about Welcome to Chippendales. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I enjoyed this series. I'm curious what you knew of the real story before getting the role.
My mother is a huge crime story aficionado, so anytime there's any sort of like crime show moment, I'll be like, Mom, did you know about this one? And she, of course, knew the whole backstory. Um, and she immediately gave me sort of the highlights of the shocking brutality of this wild story with such a fabulous backdrop. I mean, it couldn't have two things collide in such a more eccentric and delightful way.
Were the scripts like what your mom described, or did the show deviate a little bit from that?
Um, you know, Anytime you're working on a true story, I think you have that choice to either stay exactly true to it or um, use your creative spirit and sort of paint around that. And I think it's case by case. And in this case, it felt appropriate and much needed to paint a little bit. We didn't have as much information about some of the characters. My particular character, especially, we had like one photo of her, no interviews. We couldn't find any information about her. So it was really helpful for us to kind of get to color within the lines. But the meat of the story is what happened in real life, and it's the kind of stuff that if you wrote it, we would be like, no, the I feel like the network would be like, that's too crazy, we can't do that. But it happened in real life, so we got to do it.
You feel any sort of responsibility to this character who there's just nothing there besides that one photo?
I feel a lot of responsibility as a woman to make sure every character I play is um, fleshed out, strong, finding her way in a world, and represents the era that she's living in. So this woman that I was playing was living in the late 70s, early 80s in a business world in which she had no power, and the only way she could find power is through a man, which happened to be her husband. So it was important for me to sort of flesh out a woman who was navigating the patriarchy, even though the man in power in her life was her husband. I think that made it even more complicated and more problematic and more interesting to play.
What was it like working with Kumail?
Kumail's wonderful. He's the kindest, loveliest person. Him and his sweet wife Emily are just such wonderful humans, and um, couldn't have been better people to work with and better artists to play with. Just lovely.
The show also sort of fluctuates in tone. Some of it's very light and funny, and a lot of it is much darker. And then we have all the performance scenes. What was the mood like on set?
We tried to keep it light and bright. It was always a wonderful place to be. That set was so lovely. It was just lots of laughs and good times, even when we were doing some of the darker stuff. I always try to live in a space and work in a space where when there's dark, there has to be light because that's what life is like. One of my favorite playwrights, the great Chekhov, he always said his plays were comedies, but we try to make them dramas. But his point was that with darkness, there has to be light.
Of course. And were there any other cast members that you particularly enjoyed working with? And
Oh, sweet, sweet Murray Bartlett. Oh, the best. He was just brilliant. Juliet was absolutely wonderful, so incredible, so inspiring to work with every day. Robin DeJesus, Andrew Rannells. I mean, we had an all-star lineup. All of these, brilliantly talented people. Um, and then also our dancing boys. Not only are they great actors, but they also are very good at dancing. They're actual dancing boys who can act. So that was also super fun every day. But this was a true treat. We had such a wonderful crew, and the cast was just lovely. It was one of those jobs where we're always lucky to get to walk in every day and get to do what we love, but it's even more lucky when there's good people around.
since she was familiar with the story, what did your mom think of the show?
My mom loved it. She loved it. And also people who know the specifics of the story really well. I think we again we stayed true to the meat and potatoes, but we really fleshed out these humans, and and I think and made it more hopefully made it even more heartbreaking that these events transpired and more shocking. You know, it's still unbelievable that it happened.
You heard any surprising reactions to the show?
A lot of people didn't know that there was murder involved. You know, that to me alone was amazing and shocking. Um, and also, it's so I think people were surprised at how groundbreaking men taking their clothes off for women was. You know, for since the dawn of time, women have been taking their clothes off for men, but it took until 1970 whatever, 1978 for that's how long it took. 1978 for some men to just take off their pants for ladies? Like, come on. That I think is always shocking to people.
How do you feel about the limited series format? Is it nice to have sort of the end in mind?
I love a limited series because I think it gives an audience a chance to dive in deep. It feels like doing like a 10-hour movie. But there are times where I wish that we could keep characters going. You know, you fall in love with the the crew and the cast and the characters, and you're like, oh, can't we just go 4 more seasons? You know, come on. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting, special way to tell stories right now in a time where audiences have the capacity and um, the attention span for it. It's an exciting time for television and storytelling in general.
Yeah. Well, I would have loved to see more of Gina on Be Positive.
Oh,
That was a fun show I watched. My mother-in-law gave my father-in-law a kidney, so we were very excited about that show.
it's so
what
cool.
was that whole experience like?
Oh, it was fantastic. You know, I'm doing Sweeney Todd right now on Broadway, and Ben Vereen, who was on the show, came this weekend, and it was so good to see him and give him a hug. And Linda Lavin came a couple weeks ago. Marco Panett, who created the show, came recently as well. Um, you know, I have to say it was such an honor to work with all those legends. There was a day that we were sitting on the couch blocking, and Scott Ellis, who's an incredible director, was directing. He's directed many a Broadway show. We looked at each other and we looked at the couch, and Rondi Reed, Ben Vereen, Hector Elizondo, um, Linda Lavin, I think I can't remember who else was sitting there. It was just a block of Tony Awards, not to mention all the other awards they've all gotten. You know, it's just an incredible volume of talent that I was just honored to work with, and to be in the Chuck Lorre I guess you could call it the Megaverse. Isn't that what they call the what what do they call it when you're in a Marvel movie? The Marvel universe? I'm
Yeah, yeah.
gonna say it wrong.
Universe. Universe.
Or the spider, you know, when you're in the Spider Verse. I was in the Chuck Lorre verse. It was amazing to be in that, you know, history of great television, and great time with Thomas Middleditch. We had, you know, just all great folks, good people.
Also enjoyed Masters of Sex, which we've seen a lot of cast members now go on to different you know, Jeremy Strong, all these other people in big roles now.
Yes, Jeremy. Oh my God. Yes,
And
Jeremy
Betty.
is incredible. And Betty. And then sweet Lizzie. Oh, I love Lizzie's performance this year. Like, she's one of my favorite actors of all time. And I feel like Fleischman is in trouble. She blew us out of our water. You know, when I got to hug her and see her, I've just brought tears to my eyes how beautiful her performance was. She's just so incredible in that.
You were also in another story that people think they know more about than they do, which was impeachment playing Paula Jones. What was that like?
You know, it was really interesting to play somebody that is universally sort of unliked in a way that is not her fault, and somebody who's been manipulated by the media in many ways since the moment that she arrived in the public space, and is continuing to sort of be shaped and molded by figures in the media. So um, I was really sort of happy to give her some backstory, give her some grace. And I feel like people found, I hope people found some empathy for her through this show. And that was the whole point of this show, was to remind the audience that we judged these women and when they had no agency, when they really had no control over their voice and no control over the story that was being told about them. And Paula Jones was one of those women. And unfortunately, I think she's still being manipulated and controlled, sort of by the section of the media that she has continued to kind of live in. So I was really honored to sort of like help retell her story. Um, and also what a fascinating character study. Just the physicality, the vocal quality, trying to make sure that this person who is so specific that she still felt like a human to everybody and she didn't feel like a cartoon. So it was a real challenge, but an honor. And I was in the Ryan Murphy verse. That you I like to be in people's universes.
That's true. That's
Marvel,
true.
I'd like to be in the Marvel verse too. If you're listening, I can be somebody, I can be a superhero or a superhero adjacent, an aunt or a wife or a weird mom. I can play moms now. I am a mother. Can I be can I be Aunt May next?
Good idea. Well, you do have a project
Pitching
coming.
myself. How has this become a pitch for me to Kevin Feige? Like me doing my pitch.
I'm sure it'll work out. Well, you do have an interesting project list on IMDb coming up, but I've learned to be careful what I'm asking based on what you can say. Can you tell me about any films you have coming up, or you're not supposed to talk about them?
I don't think there's anything that I can't talk about. Which one is it? You can go ahead and ask me.
Art Blonde?
Oh, that's a beautiful story about Judy Holliday, who is one of my idols, who had a very tragically short life and extremely beautiful career. So yeah, we're still trying to get that one, trying to get that one to the masses because I think it's a story that needs to be told. It's really beautiful.
What else do you have coming up?
Well, right now you can see me on the Broadway. Me and Josh Groban are doing a little Sweeney Todd. Um, yeah, and I'm playing like one of my dream roles. I'm getting to play Mrs. Lovett with Josh Groban, Sweeney Todd. So come and see us at the Lunt Fontanne Theater. We're there Wednesday through Sunday, making pies.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some time. I hope that this interview leads to a Marvel role for you and plenty of other great stuff.
I love that this was my pitch.
Yes,
I
thank
just
you
like to
so
be
much.
I like to be in people's metaverses.